Hi, and welcome back to the Mom and Mind podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kat, and this is another episode of Behind the Sessions. In this one, to wrap up the year of 2024, I want to talk about just how exhausted people are, how exhausted moms are, and how tired you might be as well. Um, there's been so much going on this year. And definitely towards the end of the year, we've been through all kinds of holiday stuff, whether it's good or bad or ugly, or you put out a lot of energy, or you're trying to be pregnant, or you are pregnant, or you've had a baby. And um, what I find is there's so much pressure, during the holiday season. And as I've talked about before, to be happy and do all the things and be grateful, and certainly there is that, and there's space and time for that. However, there's usually not as much space or time for really acknowledging the exhaustion that people feel at the end of the year, and then um, gearing up for the new year, when there is this additional pressure to now um, come up with resolutions. There could be a continued pressure to feel like you need to work on yourself, or have bigger goals, or do better, or your year in review might, um, it might come up for you that the things that you wanted to accomplish this year, the way you wanted to feel, the things you wanted to do didn't happen. Maybe some of them did, and you can be grateful for that. Maybe some of them didn't, and now you feel pressure to find new goals, or bigger goals, or have more improvement as the new year comes around. Not to mention, if it hasn't already started for you, the onslaught of commercials and programs and nonsense about getting your body back and losing weight, and whatever the pressures are around shifting and changing your body, because it's a new year and there's supposed to also be a new you, and so on and so on and so on. So I just want to invite people to check in with themselves. How are you really doing? What is really going on for you? What is your truth right now, in terms of your health, your mental health, your overall wellness, your capacity and or ability to engage in any kind of self-care or joyful activities? And when I say that, I mean not just your capacity, but the system you're in, the family you're in, the type of support that you have. If you're going to review your year, um, and look towards the next year for what's to come, you have to be in there with all of that. How you are doing, how you're really doing, has to be in there with all of that. Because if you're not included in this equation, then you run the risk of further prioritizing other people, other things, um, other people's wishes for you, or other people's pressures on you. And I just don't see how that's sustainable or helpful, really, for anybody. Um, so, the end of the year always brings on this time of reflection and looking forward. And what I'm speaking to right now is just kind of the underbelly of things that get lost in the mix. I'm not really coming on here to be a Debbie Downer about this, but because there's so much out there about, cheerful, holiday, grateful, gratitude, and all of that is great and wonderful. That is part of it too. But this is a both and. This is a yes and. This is a two things can be true at the same time. More than two things can be true at the same time. You can be so grateful for loads of things and also still feel sad or down or like something's missing, for a number of other things. Um, and if we are to really sit and reflect on how we are doing in the middle of all of this, it's okay too if you yourself have a mix of things that you could be feeling good about some progress you made at some point in your life, but also feel sad or mad or mm, angry or resentful or whatever the other feelings are about any number of other things in your life. And honestly, you could have gotten lost in the mix of the end of the year activities, no matter what it is, if it's family, if it's kids' activities. You have had to buy gifts for a bunch of teachers and tried to remember what everybody wanted for their Christmas present or whatever other holiday you celebrate. The things that you uh, have had to keep and hold in your mind and juggle. Like sometimes I get this vision of people just spinning plates in the air. If you guys have ever seen any of that, where there's somebody who's holding multiple long poles in their hands and head and arms and whatever, and there's plates spinning at the top. And that's how I feel about the holidays sometimes, is we've got all of this stuff up in the air. We're trying to juggle and hold all of this stuff to prevent it all from breaking down, prevent things from falling apart. And there is just a really natural and understandable and somewhat expectable result of that, which is exhaustion, fatigue, being tired, not wanting to, do a bunch of extra stuff. Part of the reason I feel that it is so important to really truly acknowledge these sadder parts or more angry parts or depressed parts or darker parts of how you feel, is because if you continuously overlook that and bypass this part of you that's true and real and actually really happening, then it continues to just kind of grow in the dark corner somewhere and fester, and at some point become something that takes over and manages you. And in order to move into, whether it's the new year or just a random Tuesday, that you want to move into like a different phase where you have energy to set goals, or you want to try something new in your life, these other parts need to be held and heard and given space and time to be expressed in whatever way that is for you. Obviously, therapy is a great place for that. If journaling is your thing, then that. If you prefer to talk to a close friend about how you're feeling, then you can do that. If you prefer just silent reflection, if you need to talk out loud to the sky, whatever it is, whatever your mode is or your need is, to attend to that is very, very important. There's something to be said for how mentally unwell it can make us if we continuously like shove down our feelings, if we don't talk about things, if we don't express ourselves, if we don't acknowledge our emotional truth. It continues to make you more and more unwell. And that's what I don't want for people. I want for people to be as well as possible, to be able to be unburdened by the heavy emotional weight of things that they've been carrying. Because the more and more that accumulates, the harder and harder it is to move forward. It's like carrying just bags and bags of heavy garbage behind you trying to get up a hill or just trying to walk forward in a straight line, the more you're carrying, the harder it is to move through life, the harder it is to be present in relationships with yourself, with your kids, with your job, with your whatever, all of the things. And you can become really, really burdened by the weight of all of the unprocessed, unaddressed feelings, thoughts, emotions. It can feel like too much to bear to continue to push through while you feel this exhaustion, whether it's physical exhaustion or emotional exhaustion. Sometimes by the end of the year, you don't even know. It's just you feel tired and you don't know why. So I really invite you to set aside some time. It doesn't need to be hours. You don't need to go like sit on a mountaintop and meditate for days. Just 5 minutes. If you have 1 minute, then 1 minute here and there throughout the day or throughout the week where you can set everything aside, phones, responsibilities, the electronics of any kind, and just sit for a moment and listen to yourself, listen for what comes up. And if you feel like a pang of resistance even to that idea, that means there's probably something in there that needs to be held and heard, in a safe way and in a safe environment. It can be hard to sit with difficult feelings. You may or may not even be able to put words to it. It could just be that you cry for a couple of minutes. It could be that you cry for longer than that. What I do know is that none of those feelings last forever if they're given time and space, to be heard and to be held. The feelings that last forever are the ones that are pushed and shoved down and never attended to. So I'm a little bit oversimplifying the process of sitting with your emotional self. But what I really want to get across is the importance of creating space and time to do that so that you can do all of those other positive goal setting things if that's what you want to do. I'm a heavy proponent of you don't have to always be working on something. Sometimes it's okay to just be. So if in your moment of quiet, in your moment of reflection, you hear from yourself for yourself that actually I don't want to be pushing forward right now. I don't want to have a long list of things that I'm supposed to be doing. I don't want to, you know, be geared towards achievement for the next however many, weeks or months. I want to just be. That's okay too. Those times are important too. We just live in a time and in cultures of where achievement is always on the table. And if we don't take it off, then that pressure is constant and it's always there. So, as we're wrapping up this year, I hope just this little bit of reflection is helpful for you, to give you a little space and time just to think really about you and your state of being physically, mentally, emotionally, and honor where you're at, honor what your needs are, and honor and hold the space and time that you need and deserve and require for yourself. As usual, I thank you so much for being here with me and for being a listener to the Mom and Mind podcast. We're at 8.5 years, about to go into this next year. And I'm just really, in my own reflection, really incredibly grateful to all of our past guests, all of the people who've shared so vulnerably here their story to hopefully impact and help and support somebody else out there. And if you're one of those people who have shared on the podcast, just thank you so much. And if you're somebody who has been helped and supported by this podcast, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad it has been helpful for you. And for my part, the work continues, the passion continues. I will continue to be doing this podcast and putting out episodes for you and for your loved ones to hopefully be able to hear some part of yourself in another person's story, and to be able to hear some part of yourself in the reflections that I have for you about therapy and about healing. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Until next time.